Shalom and welcome to episode 3 of Log's webinar series, The Science of Barrier Packaging. We are so happy to have you here with us today.
Lilach and I will lead you through today's webinar. Together with our guest speakers, we will discuss one of the hottest topics in the pharmaceutical packaging industry, the challenges of barrier packaging within the global trend of sustainability. Actually, the goals of sustainability and the process for achieving higher barrier performance in many ways are contrary. Therefore, we will break down the significant topic together with you and delve further into challenges surrounding barrier packaging within the global trend of sustainability, as we hear from our experts today.
We will begin by hearing about sustainability trends within the pharma primary packaging industry, and then look into the details of recyclability of EVOH as one of the main oxygen barrier materials. Following, you will be introduced to Log's approach to the sustainability requirements of our customers, and we'll look in a few examples of how these have been implemented.
Throughout this webinar, we invite you to get in touch with us with any questions you might have about the topics discussed or information shared, and also about the products which we offer. For this, please feel free to click on the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. At the end of the webinar, we will have a live Q&A session during which we will answer those questions. During the webinar, we will also invite you to answer our live poll, to hear your insights, which we will then share at the end of the webinar.
We would like to welcome now our first guest speaker, Mr. Colin Reed, who will speak to us about sustainability trends in pharma primary packaging. Colin has 25 years of experience in the packaging industry, during which he worked in various key positions at several leading pharma packaging companies. In 2019, Colin founded RIP Consulting, a UK-based consultancy which offers global strategic consulting services for pharmaceuticals and medical device packaging. Colin, we are now looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. I'd like to start by putting pharmaceutical primary packaging waste into context. In 2019, there were about 80 million tons of packaging waste in the EU. Of that, 500 to 800,000 tons is pharmaceutical primary packaging waste, around 1%, less than 1% of the total. There are three basic types of pharma primary packaging. Flexible packaging, which contains, in almost all cases, PVC and or aluminium, quite often multi-component laminates, which is more or less impossible to recycle. You have rigid plastic bottles. Quite often these are single polymers and as a material quite recyclable. And then you have glass packaging for injectables and liquids. And glass can be recycled multiple times. However, it is very heavy and the energy that you need to both produce and recycle glass is extremely high. A second component to this is that primary packaging quite often contains the remaining pharmaceutical content, and therefore collecting it and cleaning it is also a very complex process. The industry, in particular primary packaging producers, have already introduced a number of innovations and changes to improve the sustainability of primary packaging. First is to reduce the size and weight of packaging by improving material technology and redesigning packs. By improving the processing technologies, they've been able to increase the performance by using less material. Reducing the amount of mixed polymer content, so not having multiple plastics, but single family plastics, to allow them to achieve and meet recycling thresholds and introduce the packs into recycling streams, in particular for bottles. Trying to remove aluminium in complex laminates, and that's a very difficult issue that we'll talk about a little bit later. Finding alternatives to PVC. PVC is a really non-recyclable polymer, and Polypropylene, PE, PET has been introduced as alternatives. And more importantly, integrating barrier solutions into the primary pack to remove the need for drop-ins and secondary pack, reducing the overall weight and packaging components. The real challenge here is that changing existing registered drugs is a very, very costly and time-consuming process, and very rarely does it make economic sense to a pharma company to do that. And for that reason, so far, changes have been really quite minimal, and pharma companies have more or less only been paying lip service to sustainability in pharma primary packaging. If we look a little bit more deeply at the challenges of recycling pharmaceutical packaging, we'll talk about how complex the environment is and the fact that it needs ownership and collaboration. It starts with the challenge that if you're in your home and you have an empty drug pack, there is no recycling stream, there is no collection point for your finished pharmaceutical pack. The recycling processes are inadequate to adequately separate multi-material laminates, and the best that can be done for flexible packaging is to recover some energy and some aluminium. Monopolymer bottles, from that perspective, are a lot easier. Chemical recycling processes need to be further advanced. Processes like pyrolysis and gasification don't yet recover the chemicals, the polymers adequately, so that they can be recycled for reuse. With pharmaceutical products, the shelf life and barrier requirements are much higher than for consumer goods, which often means that certainly with flexible packs, you have aluminium included. And this makes the recycling even more complicated. Again, bottles, if you have an integrated barrier in a bottle, they're actually much easier to recycle. As I've already mentioned, the change process for an existing registered drug can take 1 to 2 years to requalify a new primary pack. And that's almost never economically viable, particularly if you're looking at some fast-moving drugs, the analgesics, painkillers. It is almost impossible to make an economic case for changing an existing primary pack. All of these changes then requires collaboration between the users, the patients, local and regional councils and hospitals and pharmacies to arrange collection processes, pharmaceutical companies and packaging companies to provide and introduce the innovations, and the regulators to either enforce or to allow these changes to take place in a much easier way. This complexity and the consequent lack of ownership has the consequence that almost all pharma packaging, and in some cases the content, ends up in landfill. If we look at the current approaches that are being taken to improving the sustainability of packaging, pharmaceutical companies have started to wake up to the fact that they do need to make changes, and they all have ESG policies, so they all need to make some moves towards improving the sustainability of their pharmaceutical packaging. While the true circular economy perhaps is not available today regarding pharmaceutical packaging, they've decided to look at carbon footprint as a way of improving the sustainability. And there are tools available like life cycle analyses that actually show the overall greenhouse gas options and impact of different types of packaging. So when they're introducing a new pack for a new drug, they can actually make informed decisions that has sustainability as one of the key components in their decision making. One of the interesting outputs of the life cycle analysis is that flexible packaging and monopolymer bottles have a carbon footprint that's up to 5 times less than that of glass. People think that glass is the most recyclable, and technically it can be recycled multiple times, but the huge amount of energy that's needed to both produce and recycle glass makes its carbon footprint extremely high. The other thing that companies have started to look at is, rather than treating packaging as a necessary evil, as a simple component and a commodity, they're looking at what the value of packaging is through their value chain and considering something called the total cost of ownership. How much does it cost me to have the right pack in terms of my unit drug cost? And sustainability is a key component of that. So it considers not just the price per kilo of your packaging component, but also how does it impact my production processes? Can I produce more? Can I produce with less input and less cost with a different type of pack? What is my impact on my freight and my warehousing costs? Also, the impact on differentiation. Can I sell more with this pack? Simplification, by reducing the number of components in my pack, I actually make other cost savings elsewhere in my processes. So total cost of ownership and carbon footprint are two key approaches that the industry is already taking. Finally, as we look forward, it's critical that packaging is seen as a key pillar to the success in the fight for sustainability. And packaging innovation is continuing at a pace to ensure that it can be made more and more sustainable. I've already mentioned reducing number of components is probably the one area that's going to make the biggest impact. In particular, where you have drop-ins or overwraps and secondary packs, you can introduce both passive and active barrier solutions. The picture here shows Log's ActiveGuard, which is active moisture and oxygen absorber that's put into an insert in the neck that reduces the need for 2 drop-ins and massively improves the barrier performance of that material and reduces complexity and weight. How can you increase the monopolymer content, the single polymer content, so that you reach recycling thresholds in the various countries where that's relevant? For flexible packs, removing PVC and aluminium from the pack is seen as the holy grail. For low barrier, polypropylene and PET is already available. That can be sold today. For medium and high barrier at the moment, there is a PE option in development, but that's seen still as a significant challenge to replace aluminium in high barrier blister packs. For sachet laminates, development is undergoing to remove the aluminium and replace it with things like EVOH, Ciox and Halox. With glass packaging, there are a number of options available to have plastic syringes and vials to move from single-use syringes to pre-filled syringes, auto-injectors, lots of devices that actually make a big step towards improving the sustainability of the pack. My final message here is the options are available. Your packaging producers have these options and these innovations available. It is critical that packaging is seen as a key component to delivering the drug successfully, and it should be designed for sustainability. And to do that, then you need to make sure that the packaging producer is introduced into the design process at a very early stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin, for your presentation. And yes, I completely agree with you. From the beginning, Log should be involved in any new packaging project.
As the next step, we would like to hear you, our guests, and receive your insights into several questions we have prepared. We will now launch a live poll with several questions and would like for you to answer the questions to the best of your knowledge and experience. You will now see a pop-up window on your screen, and we would like to ask you to answer these questions during the next couple of minutes. Thank you to all who have already submitted their response. We will wait another 30 seconds for the last few to send in their answers. Okay, thank you very much for answering and sharing with us your insights. We appreciate this very much. We will present the results of our poll towards the end of the webinar, just before the Q&A session. I would like to take the opportunity to mention again, in case you have any questions throughout the webinar, please use the Q&A icon at the bottom of the screen to submit your questions.
Our next speaker is Ms. Didier Houssier, Director of Market Development at Coureret EVAL. Didier will speak to us about the exciting and relevant topic of the recyclability of HDPE EVOH pharmaceutical bottles. Stay tuned.
So good morning or good afternoon or good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to participate to the webinar organized by Lilach Packaging, and I would like to thank very much the team of the company for inviting me for this small opening remarks about optimized performance and recyclability of HDPE EVOH pharmaceutical bottles. My name is Didier Houssier. I'm working for Coureret EVAL Europe in Antwerp, Belgium. Coureret mission, at first, we are committed to developing new fields of business using pioneering technology that improves the environment and enhances the quality of life throughout the world for people and the planet to achieve what no one else can. That's the reason why I'm particularly happy to cooperate with Lilach Packaging for the development of such bottles. First, let me introduce our product. What are EVAL EVOH resins and film? EVAL EVOH is a random copolymer combining the strengths of ethylene and vanilla alcohol. To break some wrong statement that I sometimes hear when we talk with technical people, EVOH is not a blend of polyethylene and polyvinyl alcohol. It's a random copolymer combining the strengths of ethylene and the strengths of vinyl alcohol. When you have less ethylene, you get a better barrier. You are, however, more sensitive to the relative humidity. If you put more ethylene, you have more thermoplasticity. It is more hydrophobic and it is more flexible. So for the bottle business of Lilach Packaging, they combine EVOH in a multi-layer structures where the EVOH is always in the center at the best location. EVAL shows excellent gas barrier, a barrier to all substances but light and water. That is why EVOH is always combined in a multi-layer structure in the case of pharmaceutical bottles with high density polyethylene. EVAL EVOH copolymers offer excellent oxygen barrier properties. You can see here the evolution of the oxygen barrier versus the relative humidity. The position of the EVOH layer will be very critical to be able to maintain whatever storage conditions, the best performance and the best protection of the pharmaceutical ingredient. Keep in mind that EVOH is a physical barrier. It's not an active packaging. It remains all the time. It stays, it locks the ingredients inside and it keeps the ingredients you want to keep outside. So for example, the gas like oxygen will be kept outside the packaging. CO2 for liquid ingredients would rather be kept inside the packaging. It also keeps the flavor and aroma. It protects against odors. It has a very good chemical resistance. For example, it protects against mosh moa that could migrate from paper or organic solvents. And finally, very important in pharmaceutical business, it protects the pharmaceutical ingredient from any contaminants. potential contaminants that can come during transportation. It is also important that the EVOH-based packaging are satisfying recycling guidelines. Since in this case, we are particularly focusing on the US region, and we give the overview of the position of EVOH in the various recycling guidelines. 3 organizations or programs are making reference to EVOH: the Association of Plastic Recyclers, APR, Sustainable Packaging Coalition with the How to Recycle label. Let me use the pointer. And the STM that have issued the RIC identification code. If you look the positioning of EVOH in the barrier material in polyolefin recycling stream, you can see for PE flexible that the APR requires a testing. However, for HDPE rigid bottle, which is the topic of the day, you can see that EVOH is a very well positioned with a preferred option up to 5% loading. And in the case of SPC, you can see that there is no restriction and that even historically, it has been approved up to 10% EVOH in PE film with retained compatibilizer. Of course, in this case, it's a particular case. But more overall, HDPE recycling, HDPE containing EVOH is very, very well accepted by the post-consumer recycling streams. EVAL conducted a recycling study with a well-recognized consulting organization, Nextech. Our focus was on post-consumer recycled polyolefin, PP and HDPE, processing and thermoforming or blow molding using up-to-date recycling streams. With the support of Nextech, an overall plan was made to assess if the presence of EVOH in the recycling streams had any impact on it. Here is the recycling assessment test scheme. First, we conducted the sorting to check the sorting ability of EVOH containing bottles at TOMRA. The conclusion from this test was that EVOH does not interrupt the sorting process. PE EVOH, PE bottle, even with 12% loading of EVOH, can be sorted and ejected as HDPE. You have here to the right an illustration of the sorting using NIR process. The second step of our test scheme consisted in conducting an audit in the MRF, Material Recovery Facility. The EVOH percentage in the HDPE bottle bale was assessed, and we could conclude that maximum 5% of the bottle were containing multi-layer bottles. So 95% were non-EVOH containing bottles. You can imagine bottles of HDPE used for cosmetic, for bleaching agents, etc. The third step of the recyclability assessment was inspired from APR recycling guidelines using, however, PCR HDPE and a 10% loading ratio with a control of PCR HDPE bottle monolayer. You have here the reference to the APR recycling protocol, the critical guidance test as they name it, and a description of the process that were implemented in our study. This assessment, here I want to share with you the collection and sorting assessment. So we wanted to check the market application and to see whether there was, what was the quantity of EVOH containing bottles. For that, we went into a material recycling facility. You can see me here in the model of the bottles. Some of them are bleaching water, so you can imagine the stress it generated. We opened the bale and we classified the bottle that potentially could contain some EVOH. And with this one, we took the bottles to our laboratory to confirm the presence or not of EVOH based on the expert assessment. We could conclude that 95% of non-EVOH containing bottles in the whole PCR HDPE recycling stream was indeed a good overestimation. The HDPE EVOH rigid containers recycling study flow was as follows. our customers, Lilach, is producing HDP, regrind EVOH, regrind HDP co-extrusion. In fact, the regrind is only on one side of the bottle in their case. They make co-extrusion blow molding. If there is a co-extrusion blow molding, the scraps, the carrot, as we name it, are used in the regrind and placed back in the bottle. This bottle will then be used for tablets filling. Tablets filling will go to, after use, to a collection and sorting process. It can be the case. These bottles could be compounded and decontaminated, for example, in this our study, for 6 hours at 140 degrees C under vacuum. If we would use this compounding to make our recycling study and the assessment of the presence of EVOH on the post-consumer recycling stream, we would not be able to make sure that there was actually EVOH present in the study. So what we did, we collected various industrial scraps with highest EVOH content, and we intentionally added at 10% loading these scraps in the PCR HDP. And for that, and with that, we created the PCR HDP EVOH. To make sure that EVOH would be submitted to the same decontamination treatment, we again resubmitted the compound of the PCR to a decontamination step. These products were then co-extrusion blow molded at different ratio to produce mono and multi-layer bottles. And these bottles, we could make then the assessment on test migration and mechanical properties. The compounding trials of the dry blend was conducted on a certain twin screw extruder at conventional processing temperature to produce pellets. Two types of pellets, one with PCR HDPE at a ratio 90-10, and to handle the difference in color that we observed with PCR HDPE, this is a typical color of post-consumer recycled material, we also made a reference of virgin HDPE. But in both cases, the compounded were produced at Brunel University without any issue. The co-extrusion blow molding was then conducted at our converters like Lilach to make this type of assessment on how it can be processed. A range of bottle structures were made with different blends. Both were obtained with dry mixing of various resins. And you can see here the combination of layers that we produce with different trials using different material combination, and adding also one possible scenario, which is the use of EVOH as a functional barrier, either in direct contact with the inner side of the bottle or using a virgin HDPE layer to further secure the internal ingredients protection. In summary, Courare offers a wider range of EVAL EVOH resin to satisfy most stringent packaging requirements, and recyclability performance have come to add value to our product. At levels as high as 5%, EVOH has no significant impact on the properties or performance of the recycled HDPE resin. The use of PCR HDPE in multi-layer structure will help expand potential use and reuse. Many recycling guidelines matches the reality of the recycling streams. I would like to thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Didier, for sharing with us your insights and for being with us today. EVAL's and Lilach's cooperation is indeed important for keeping sensitive formulations safe and secured, while at the same time supporting the recycling reuse processes as we do our part for a cleaner world. Now we will hear from Lilach's VP of Market and Product, Mr. Tobias Eger. Tobias will share with us the Lilach Green product strategy by focusing on Lilach's barrier product portfolio. Tobias, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lilach. For the next few minutes, I would like to share with you some of the changes and actions Lilach has implemented in our product lifecycle management. As this webinar focuses on barrier packaging, I will present a case study and also provide examples from Lilach's barrier packaging portfolio. Lilach's barrier products are part of the Lilach Green product strategy, a product strategy with the target to reduce Lilach's carbon footprint and support circular economy. Initially, we are assessing our current product portfolio and the products currently under development. We are then implementing an action plan that considers one or more of the following possible actions. First, we will optimize the weight of the product to reduce plastic without compromising on the quality and safety of the truck product. Second, we will design a recyclable product by either reducing the amount of layers, moving to a monomaterial product, and this also includes, for example, in case of an assembled product, such as child-resistant closure or an applicator, we will try to use the same material for every component of the assembled product. And, when possible, using post-consumer recycled material will always be our preference. Third, we will continuously search for innovations and to innovate ourselves with solutions that support product optimization, recyclability, or reusability. The many years of experience Lilach has in the business of primary packaging for pharmaceuticals is critical at this stage, as we understand that the quality and safety of the drug and the compliance with the regulations are key factors. This is one of the graphs which we often use in our communication with customers, but also internally. We can see here that an optimal packaging design is required to have a minimum environmental impact. Now, what is an optimal packaging design? This very much depends on the drug stability and shelf life requirements. Depending on these requirements, adjustments to the plastic usage per package are then made. The amount of desiccant will also vary depending on the shelf life requirements. This shows us that an optimal packaging design depends on the drug stability requirements. Lilach, as a packaging expert in the field of sensitive drug formulations, has the knowledge to fit the optimal packaging from its wide product portfolio. When it comes to moisture barrier bottles, Lilach not only provides a wide range of products in relation to bottle size, but also has a broad portfolio of different barrier properties. As of today, Lilach offers in this category 3 different product lines. For example, the monoblock E-series is using the more traditional way of heavier weight and more material to enable a higher moisture barrier performance. However, after successfully searching for a more sustainable approach for moisture barrier bottles, Lilach is leveraging today a specialty HDPE polymer with higher moisture barrier characteristics, which allow us to reduce weight and use less plastic. The specialty HDPE polymer allows Lilach to offer lightweight bottles with extremely good moisture barrier performance. This specialty HDPE polymer conforms with the Pharma requirements and is already today being used commercially within the US Pharma market. The next slide will give us an overview of the moisture barrier performance of the different products options which we offer. This chart shows the water vapor transmission rate of several 60 ml container closure systems, which differ only in wall thickness. We can see how a heavier weight and a higher usage of HDPE improve the moisture barrier performance of the containers. Though this is the traditional way of improving the moisture barrier characteristics of a container, it is not really a sustainable approach. Therefore, Lilach has leveraged the specialty HDPE material, and tests show that by using these materials, the WVTR can be lowered by 30 to 40%. This means a 30 to 40% higher moisture barrier without even adding any additional weight to the bottle. These are really excellent results, and I am thrilled to present them to you. Maybe you have an existing product in the market and you are wondering how you can reduce some weight from the packaging while maintaining or even slightly improving WVTR. In such a scenario, we see a great potential in reducing weight by leveraging the specialty HDPE material. Depending on how optimized the existing container already is or not, the potential weight reduction we see can be between 15 to 25% while maintaining or even improving WVTR. So what we can see here is that it is essential to have a broad product portfolio and offering a good understanding of how WVTR behaves depending on wall thickness, and also a good understanding of what materials are being used. Lilach offers its customers a very broad range and several options depending on the requirements for stability and shelf life. As a further example, I would like to present a product for which we have used the Lilach green product strategy from the very beginning and which is currently in the final stages of development. It is a 75 ml HDPE container with a 38 mm neck finish. We are launching this product from the very beginning as a standard bottle with a normal HDPE polymer, but also as a lightweight option in connection with this specialty HDPE. This product will complete Lilach's off-the-shelf barrier product portfolio, which already today is available in 15 different sizes, from 50 ml to 1500 ml. When it comes to oxygen barrier packaging, which generally uses multi-layer solutions, Lilach is working to allow better recyclability by applying a smart usage of the multi-layer approach. We are working to lower the environmental footprint of these products. And it is also worth pointing out here that using passive barrier containers allows for eliminating or at least reducing the amount of oxygen scavengers required. Concerning this topic, stay tuned for further updates as we are in development of a groundbreaking product within this category. Finally, in addition to the improvements within the product lifecycle management as I have presented, Lilach is also committed to reduce our environmental impact in other areas, including utilizing very efficient manufacturing systems and improving our water, energy, and waste management. All this for a sustainable future. Thank you.
Thank you, Tobias, for all this vital and significant information you have shared. So if you're interested in knowing if your packaging solution can be optimized, please feel free to contact our packaging experts via the link sent in the chat window. Thank you for participating in all of our exciting sessions today, and thank you all of our speakers. We will now move ahead to the interactive part of this webinar and present the poll results to you, and begin our Q&A session.
Great, to move ahead now with the poll results. And we have asked several questions. The first question was, are you already using a packaging solution with PCR material for one of your products? You have answered 12% yes for a pharma product, 18% a little bit more and easy, or it's possible to understand that for a nutraceutical or beverage product, it's easier to change, 18%. However, more than half, 53%, have not yet used any packaging solution for PCR, and 20% are not using packaging here.
Poll question number 2 was, as of today, are you using any specific passive barrier packaging? 18% chose moisture barrier, yes. 12% yes, we are using oxygen barrier packaging. 50% said yes, we are using both oxygen and moisture barrier packaging. Nobody said that they're not using any passive barrier. This was a single choice question. I'm sure that there are others who do use desiccants, but they use also barrier. So that's nice to see. And again, 20% said we are not using any packaging. Question number 3 was, are you willing to initiate a packaging change for sustainable packaging solution? Here, 30% said yes, they're willing to make a packaging change to get a more sustainable packaging solution. They can reduce 20% of the plastic within the packaging, and they are ready to pay more than 10%, up to 10% more. 50% said no, we will only change to a more sustainable packaging solution if the cost is the same. 6% said that any future packaging solution needs to bring also cost benefit. 0% said no, it will not touch any existing packaging as it's too much work. And again, the 20% which are not using packaging. Question number 4. Does your company have a sustainability target for primary packaging on one or more of the following? So this was a multiple choice question. So 27% said yes, we have, including CO2 footprint reduction, including the possibility of material change. This means stability studies and so on. 23% said yes, to include CO2 footprint reduction by weight reduction or by process optimization. 40% are saying, yes, we have a target, including making the package recyclable and reusable. And 12% are saying, no, we are not having any packaging. The last question which we asked was, have you already completed one or several projects in which you have optimized or changed the primary packaging for sustainability reasons? Here it's very nice to see 24% is saying yes, one project. 35% said yes, more than one project, 1 to 5. 20% are saying not yet, but we are currently working on a packaging change. Only 6% are saying we are not planning to change primary packaging. And 20% again saying they are not using packaging. So these are very nice results. Thank you very much for sharing your insight and knowledge. We appreciate it very much. So as the next part, we want to move ahead to the Q&A session. And please feel free to send your questions via the Q&A button. And I have together with me here Lilach, and also Didier from EVAL is joining so that we can answer your questions. Lilach, we have first question. Please go ahead.
Okay, first question. What is the cost of the specialty HDPE compared to normal standard HDPE polymer grade?
Yes, that's a very good question. I think interesting for a lot of people. So at the current moment, the material is still quite a lot more expensive than the standard HDPE. I'm talking about a specialty HDPE material. However, if you calculate that you can reduce the amount of plastic and up to, let's say, 25% due to its better moisture barrier performance, we can see that the price level of the bottle or of the container would be similar or slightly higher compared to a bottle with the normal standard HDPE. and also non-sustainable bottle, all right? So the answer here is, in the end of the day, the bottle will be similarly priced or slightly higher.
Okay, thank you, Toby. Next question. Can you tell us more about the specialty HDP material? Can it be recycled? What is a regulatory status?
So the specialty HDP material, as I mentioned earlier, is already today used commercially in the US market. I'm talking about in the pharmaceutical RX market after FDA approval and so on. It conforms to the US FDA requirements for pharma primary packaging and is, of course, food grade approved globally. So in general, you can say that the packaging with the specialty HDP can be recycled in the normal HDP stream. Of course, this is always depending a bit on the domestic recycling guidelines and so on, but the specialty HDP can be recycled normally within the HDP stream.
Thank you. Question number 3. You mentioned that when using a passive barrier packaging, the amount of desiccant can be reduced. Can you explain, please?
Yes, so with a passive barrier bottle, less moisture penetrates into the packaging and therefore also less moisture needs to be absorbed, right? So this allows to reduce the amount of desiccant sachets or drop-ins. For example, Loch's monoblock bottle, with Loch's monoblock bottle, up to 12 times less moisture penetrates into the packaging. So, of course, we still need to deal with the moisture in the headspace, but yes, the amount of desiccant can be reduced significantly. Specifically, also on the oxygen-sensitive formulations, the potential to save cost and reduce the complexity of the packaging is really huge. With Loch's oxyblock or multi-block packaging, almost no oxygen is ingressing anymore through the packaging, so that the oxygen scavenger can be eliminated or completely, or at least reduced its size. And I'm sure that many of you have already experienced also, together with oxygen scavengers, there's a further or bigger complexity in the packaging with all kind of side effects, such as bad smell and so on. So reducing those side effects helps also a lot.
Yeah, we have a last question. Our time is up now. Last question is if we can share the webinar presentation. The webinar will be available as on demand in our website, www.blogpack.com, and you are more than welcome to visit there. And of course, sending us your question or any clarification required to our expert team.
I see there's one more question coming in for Didier.
Yes, I'm here.
Great. So there's a question of how the multi-layer principle is working, how EVOH is affecting here. So maybe you can just explain this in a few words.
Yeah, you were referring earlier about passive barrier for water. It's the same as passive barrier for oxygen. In fact, the word passive is maybe not the word I would use. I would rather use the term physical barrier rather than an active barrier which is actually consumed when in function. So a physical barrier is permanently a barrier material, and as EVOH is an extremely good an extremely good physical barrier to oxygen, CO2, everything, all potential migrants, except light and water, That's why you need the multi-layer concept that you have that you are producing today. And so the polyolefin provides a water barrier. The EVOH provides the oxygen and gas and migrants barrier, and then you have the colorants that helps you having the light barrier. So I think this is what I would answer. I hope it satisfied the answer. Otherwise, of course, I'm available offline. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Didier. So I'm very happy for all the questions. Thank you. And we want to close and finalize the webinar. So thank you very much for attending. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at barrierexperts@logpack.com, as you can see right now on the screen. And we'll be happy to share more information. Also, if you're interested on how packaging could be changed to a more sustainable option, please feel free to contact us. Thank you very much for everybody who has participated and attended. We're looking forward to hearing from you. All the best. Bye-bye.